Hello and welcome to Geekatplay Studio Tutorials. In this tutorials, we'll look more on animations, keyframe and object animation. So we'll become a little bit more familiar how to use a keyframe and what options and what properties we can animate. So let's go ahead. First, we'll create a terrain, and this is a standard terrain. Now I'm going to open a timeline right here. Let's take our camera, just move slightly above so we can observe our terrain. Next, what I'm going to do is right click. Actually, sorry, we need to select the terrain because I want to add keyframe to terrain. So here, be sure you selected the object that you want add keyframe. So go ahead, add keyframe to this. Next, I want to move, I want to switch actually time as a seconds. So I'll move to 2 seconds at this point. And mine, if you notice, after keyframing is enabled at this point. Next, I'm going to edit object. And right here, I'm actually right now in editing terrain. So what I'm going to do is take terrain and just slightly modify, just maybe add a slightly erasing right here on the edges. Okay, I just slightly erase and I'll go to inside the effect and we'll go ahead and click on approval a little bit, so we'll add more that way. Okay, let's click OK. Go ahead, add another keyframe. So if we're going now to the first frame and we'll go render our image, you'll notice here's our terrain before we apply all effect. So we go to our last keyframe and here we have our effects that we apply to our terrain. What is happening right here, however, it's keyframing after doesn't work when we apply just the object shape like in terrain, but we set two keyframes for our terrain, and you notice we actually modified terrain and that property options become animated at that point, and Vue created all the steps between. So let's go ahead, create very fast animation, and I will use it preview mode just to save time on the render for this, but I will keep it 24 frames and I will keep it 640. Next, we need to select where I want to render. So I'll just select and terrain morph. Okay, and I will select as AVI file. Let's click save. It will ask also what type of the format I wanted compression for my AVI. Very common is RLE or video one, but personal preference, I like use it full frames. The full frames, it will give me uncompressed quality for each frame. So if I want to do in post-production, I can achieve the best quality. But a big withdraw with this, its size of the file, it will create it. So be sure if your hard drive size it's restrictions for you, you want to use it compressed. But if you're going for the quality, use uncompressed. Um, Again, this is I'm using for the animation AVI. You can also change this to any other format if you want it. We can change this to JPEG. In that case, it will create it each frame. So let's right now we'll have this one and we'll click render animation. Sometimes may warning pop up, and in many cases it doesn't really relate it to the what the real size of hard drive you have. So right here, you will notice it start rendering frames. Currently, it's going quite a bit fast due to the speed of the computer. But again, I will hold for a second and I will be back when it's finished rendering. Okay, so right here, we have finished render our test animation. And let's preview. So you will notice it's modified in a place where I apply erase terrain, as well when we apply the effects applying to our terrain also. This way you can see how we did animated our terrain properties with morphing our terrain from one type to another. Again, this is was a low resolution. If you needed to work with more realistic quality, you need increase quality and resolution of your terrain and also apply some textures. Okay, here is one example. The next things also what I found out that many times you don't need just render just object. For example, let's create terrain. You want animated camera. So right here we have our main camera, and what I want to do, I want to animate the camera to pan around my island. To do this, we can do the same. We can create open our time frame. Let me open right here. We can add a keyframe. We can move camera a little bit, readjust our camera. Also, you notice I'm changing where camera point to. Okay, we'll adjust more. Another keyframe, move camera, and pointing camera again. And right now, if we preview, you can notice they change not just the motion of our camera, it's also changed the point where the camera pointing to. The all additional options for our camera, if we want to modify blur, focal distance, and everything, they can be animated as well. So nice things when you says add keyframe to all properties, it does add keyframe to all properties, so you can modify any of them. If you're interested what properties you can animate it for specific object, just expand your icon right here, which is open for us, view animated properties per object, and then we can expand it and we can see what properties we could animate for each object. So not all of them, not all the options can be animated, and we will won't show you or we'll let you know if you cannot animate them. Okay, also right here you'll notice I have it keep it level, so if I disable, now there are other warnings which is I can tilt my camera will be available for me. So okay, this is some options, but what happening also when you start working with a keyframe and with your camera, let me close this, you'll notice um, sometimes screen can be wrong, and its reason is why, because I did modify a couple of things. We can always reset it. Okay, in many cases you can go to the frame, like for example right here where I don't want my camera rotating, I can go back and modify it, my camera properties, and you notice right now the camera keep it this. So you can add keyframe to specific properties on the middle of your camera motion. So you can correct if you find between this and this frame, for example, you don't like it how camera move, just go on that point and start adjusting your camera. If you need it, add additional keyframe if keyframe is not automatically created. Okay, well, problem is when you start creating this motion, sometimes you want perfect circular motion of the camera around the island. And currently, if you notice, it is way not a circular, it's kind of jumping all over places. And the reason why, because all is how we try to manually adjust camera. You can use it some tips and some additions to make the camera path is smoother. So let's create new one. Okay, we'll create island again right here. Next, what I want to do is actually create a sphere. We'll expand the sphere. And here's the reason why, because if you look on our camera, we also have options which is called track and link to. So let's check those properties, what they help to us. It's to best look on them. Let's zoom out. Okay, if we take our create another two orbs, okay, we'll place one right here, another one we'll place right here. Okay, and we'll say sphere 2 link to sphere 3. So now if we take sphere 3 and start moving, you notice they're acting as the same object, so we can actually link object between each other by using this is normal, and we can apply same type to our camera. So we take our main camera and we say link to the sphere. Now when we have a sphere in rotation, notice the camera is linking. Camera now is rotating with the sphere as well. And by rotating sphere, we can apply perfect rotation motion to our camera, because our camera will follow the motion of the sphere. Couple things I want to modify for the sphere. One, I want to take a transparency and set to 100%. And also, if you don't like to do this, you can just check right here on icon and says remove from render. On that case, the sphere won't be influence our scenery at all, except it still be working for on a motion on our camera. So let's go next. We'll open animation, and while the sphere is selected, we'll add a keyframe. Next, I will move to 4 seconds. I'll take my rotation over sphere and I will rotate sphere. So notice when we do positioning, we do added keyframe. Again, if keyframe doesn't add automatically, you can go always and check on add keyframe to all properties. So right now, if we go preview, you can notice we have a perfect rotation around our island with our camera. Again, we did not set any keyframe on our camera, and if we actually look main camera, this will be exactly same set to motion of our sphere. Notice right here we have no keyframe for our set, like this small square which represent we have no keyframe set for our camera, no beginning and end. For our sphere we have these two keyframes which specify the motion or rotation in this case for our sphere. Again, all what camera is moving because we gone and we link it to the our sphere. So one thing also interesting, because our camera is rotating, we don't need just control the target of our camera, well, control motion of our camera. We can also control target or in which direction our camera looking at, and that is actually quite a bit useful when you create this as a rotation type of motion. So we'll keep it our necessary object just in center. So let's go ahead and add, and I want to move to first frame, and I will add orb. I'll take this orb and I'll place it right here on top of mountain. This is example something object, and let me set this to different color that I want to have a focal point of my camera on. Okay, next what I need to do, I can take my main camera, and when I do animation, you can notice that our camera, it's kind of not necessarily always on the middle, so that it's jumping on side. The one thing we can do, we can go inside properties, and as a track, well, two things. First, we can set our focal point for our camera. So you notice that I select right here focal point. Okay, it's a bit too far away, and I can set on my camera focal point that I wanted. Okay, right here. But by doing this, what's happening actually with my focal point, it's not I need to do all the time. Even every time I need create additional keyframes. Right here I have an option to track. So let me track the sphere. For you notice now it's on the middle. And same, I did not add any new keyframe to the camera. I just changed properties, but now you can notice our sphere is on the middle. We have it perfect rotation that is set keyframes in our sphere, and our camera tracking the object that I want them to see. So this is just the simple ways to see how the keyframe of other object may affect the properties if you link to other like cameras which doesn't have it any keyframe. Okay, so let's go ahead, render this animation. Again, I click on render. It will take little time. At this time, I'm using smaller frames, so we'll have it for time, and we'll come back when it's finished render. Okay, so right here is our animation. And you can see how we applied few settings to our scenery, and we have it the perfect circle rotation around our island with a center for our camera, this sphere on the middle. Okay, thank you for watching this tutorial from Geekatplay Studio. Please remember to visit us on the web is www.geekatplay.com.